Hey, John, good to see you, man. You doing all right?
Okay. Not so great after Sunday, Drew, but doing the best
Yeah,
that we can and getting ready for the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday.
exactly. Exactly, man. It's good to be with you. It's good to be with you, gentle listener, gentle viewer. If you're checking us out on YouTube, please give us a like, subscribe, follow us if you're listening on iTunes. We love all that. Give us a great review. All right, we're going to do a few things. We're going to raise a glass a little bit later on. We're going to have our cream of the cropper as well, but we're going to start with, oh, all the stuff that's been going on this week. And I've heard lots of chatter about, well, why is this happening and why is that happening? But what about how do you fix this? And what I'm talking about is the penalties. And one of the things I'm imagining the Texans are probably going to do, and you'll probably see this week at practice, you see them on a fairly regular basis, officials out of practice, referees out of practice. And when I say that, I think a lot of people might think, well, yeah, no, duh. Well, that's not actually the case. You don't always have officials or referees at practices. But a lot of times in instances where teams are working on, well, we want to make sure that we're following this letter of the law, this rule, they'll bring in referees who are local college refs or local high school refs. So, accomplished guys who are doing this and have done this for a long time.
Yep.
And they'll have a crew that's going to flag you for a false start, that's going to flag you for an illegal formation, that'll flag you for whatever you're trying to kind of nitpick and correct and get better at. Now, I don't know. They might not do that this week. Who knows? But I would be surprised if you don't see them out there at least one practice, if not more. But John, there's a lot of different ways, excuse me, to go about fixing some of the mistakes that the Texans have been making. And I'm not ready to panic, but I think they can get these things corrected. And I think that's just one small way, one small thing that they can wind up doing. But all in all, what are your thoughts on, okay, that's all behind and that's happened. How do you make it better? What do you do to correct what's been going on?
Well, they have officials at practice. I don't want to say 100% and stamp that. I know that for sure, but
Right.
I can't remember a practice where the officials were not there. Now, one of the things that I is going to be kind of interesting is when you do bring the officials, because you can't get NFL officials, the guys that actually officiate the game at the
Right.
practice. So you do get college officials, sometimes higher level high school officials. What ends up being an issue is sometimes the focus for those guys is in their sports is not what it is in the NFL. And you have to make sure that you understand, like, for example, where offensive linemen line up, because it's gotten over the years, it's gotten pretty rough. Like you would look across and go, man, the tackle's lined up with the flanker, the Z off the, and the Z's off the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, those two are on the same line. Like that can't be the case. And so the NFL really, starting in game one of the season, the Ravens and Chiefs made a point. You're going to line up properly or we're going to flag you. And if I remember correctly, in that game, the same crew that was there for the Ravens Chiefs was the crew for Texans Vikings. So you got to make your adjustments. Now, defensively, when it came to penalties, they called Jalen Petrie for an interference down the field that wasn't even close to interference. Like I watched that play, I was watching it in real time because I was like, I knew it was some sort of flea flicker pass. So I looked downfield. So I was actually watching Johnny Munt and Jalen Petrie, and I'm like, when they threw a flag, I was furious because, I mean, there was no contact whatsoever. Jalen wasn't riding him down the field. So from that perspective, defensively, I don't know that there's, I don't want to say major concern as it pertains to penalties. Honestly, I feel like this has been an offensive holding on the first play of the game. The interception right afterwards was kind of a fluky one because Kamu Grugier-Hill, the linebacker of the Vikings, is way out of position.
It was a gift.
And
he
Tank's
got a gift.
wide open.
Yeah.
If somehow Harrison Phillips does get a hand on it, Tank's wide open, he catches it, that's a 10 to 12-yard gain at least. And so now you're 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7. Now you're kind of off and rolling, but the ball deflects all the way over to a misplaced linebacker, and away you go. But the illegal formation, the snap, a lot of it boils down to the front 5 guys. And look, you don't want to point fingers all in one spot, but it's just look at the penalty numbers and look how many of them were due to offensive line or tight ends. And that's something that those groups are going to have to either realize this is the way it's called and you're going to adapt to it, or you're going to continue to commit penalties and hurt this team. And I'm hoping you're not picking the latter of that. I hope you're picking the former of like, okay, this is what we got to do to change it. This is how they want to call it. This is how we got to change it.
Yeah.
And hopefully the officials that are there at practice this week can make those points, and they can go through the process of, if the tackle has to get up there, if Titus and Laramie have to look across the ref and go, am I good? Am I good? Yes, you're good. At the same time, the wide receivers are going, I'm off the ball. Okay, you're good. Like, and they got to do it. And, there are times in which the NFL has its bones to pick with players. I don't know the right way of saying it, but I don't want it to come across as I'm complaining. But I remember last year when the Bills played the Chiefs, there was this absolutely awesome play. Travis Kelce catches the ball. He runs downfield. He laterals to, I can't remember who it was, runs it for a touchdown. The place goes nuts. There's a flag. Kadarius Toney is offside because he lined up with his foot on the line of scrimmage. And so his toes were across the line of scrimmage. And it became this thing of, well, the NFL hadn't emphasized it up until then. And now you're going to call, and then all of a sudden we started seeing it called in a lot of other games. And so you've got to understand kind of what the flavor du jour is for how the NFL is calling it. And, if there is a real focus on holding because your hands are getting outside the framework of the body, okay, you got to make your adjustment. You're an NFL player. You've got to make the adjustments and make it right according to how the NFL is calling those games. And that's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
But I don't worry about the defense, Drew. I really don't.
I know. I don't either. I want to turn things to the positive now. I want to raise a glass of Modelo, because, hey, the good guys are back at home at NRG Stadium. That's something to look forward to. And it's another thing to look forward to because you're playing the Jaguars. And now we're in weird territory right now because think about it.
Yep.
Over the last 4 contests with the Jaguars, you've split with them. You're 2-2.
Yep.
But let's go back. Let's do a little bit of a history lesson. We've done this history lesson before if you've watched or listened to in the lab over the years. In 2010, the first time you played the Jaguars in the 2-game series that year, you entered that series 8-8. You had won 8 games against the Jags in your history. They had won 8 games. That was a pretty good mark for the Texans at that point.
Yeah.
Still young in the franchise. Most of the time they had a losing record because of the expansion years. You go there. It's a hard-fought game. It comes down to the very end, and there's a Hail Mary that Glover Quinn bats down, but bats it just directly into the arms of a Jaguars receiver, Michael Thomas. He gets in the end zone. They win. Mm-hmm. There was cheering in the press box, not by me, not by Nick Scurfield, not by the Houston media, but there's cheering in the press box.
Which isn't supposed to happen.
Is not supposed to happen.
No matter what.
It's a no. So the Jaguars took a 9-8 advantage in the all-time series.
Right.
Then the Texans peeled off 6 straight wins, lost a couple in 2013, peeled off 5 more, lost a couple in 17. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they peeled off 5 and then 6 with the breakup in between. And then they won 9 in a row, and that got snapped at the end of the 22 season. So since that loss in 2010 in November, week 10 of 2010, the Texans have basically owned them. And right now, if you win on Sunday, you will have 30 wins to just 15 for the Jags. You will double them up, which is far and away the best record. It's really been weird over that span how lopsided this rivalry has been. There's been some bad years for the Texans. I mean, they lost 14 games in 13. They had the Deshaun Watson year where they lost both of them, and that was the Jaguars. It's the best Jaguars team since probably the late 90s when Seth Payne was there.
Yep.
So we're in weird territory, John. And this is an odd situation for them because they're 0-3. They just got thumped on Monday Night Football. And as bad as the Texans feel right now, you're probably feeling worse if you're a Jags fan because you still don't have a win. You did that on national TV, your loss. And on top of all that, it was a day later. And on top of that, they had plane problems, so they did not get out of Buffalo until the wee hours of the morning. They returned home to Jacksonville, I think 6 a.m., John.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this is a team that's limping in, but it's the proverbial caged animal, and you got to look and be wary and all that stuff. It's an odd setup, this week 4 game, John.
And one final thing with that they've also had some injuries. They just found out that Foye Okun is going to be out for, I believe, about 2-3 weeks. So he's going to miss this week for sure. They had some others. Jerrion Jones, their rookie nickel, ended up getting hurt early in the game against the Bills. Gabe Davis got hurt against the Bills. Anton Harrison went out of the game against the Bills. So they're a banged up caged animal. And that does worry me a little bit. But this Texans team hasn't played, and that's the other side. The Texans team hasn't played a complete game either.
No.
I don't think you can be really excited about what they've done. And I think that kind of stuck in my craw as we were flying home from Minnesota. Like, we just really haven't seen, I don't know what level. Obviously Sunday was the D- level of this Texans team. And I hope it doesn't get any worse, but what you have to do against a team like this that is kind of wallowing in the mire is just leave them in their own muck. Like,
sure,
you have to rise to your standard, play to your standard, and put it on them for a full 60 minutes. And you can't get 30 minutes and be up, 24-3 and, well, we're going to coast. No, you have to play your game at your standard against this team. And here's the other weird side of your stat. I've thought about this too. The Texans, since I've been on the sidelines, 2014, we've only lost once in Jacksonville in 2017. And it was an awful day. I mean, awful, awful, awful day. It was terrible. Now, we didn't play there in 19 because of going to London. But we have won every other time there. 14 through 23, we've won every other time. But we have not. We've lost the last two here in 2022. They thumped the you-know-what out of us. And then last year, when they were 7-3, we were 6-4. And we met here. It's like, oh, man, the winner of this gets the first place. And we played probably our worst game of the year. They sacked CJ all day long and ended up winning the game 24-21. And we doinked a field goal off the crossbar from 59 yards out. I would have tied it and sent it to overtime. We didn't deserve to win that game. But we've lost the last two here against Jacksonville. No matter who's on the other side, it could be Jacksonville, it could be Bowling Green, it could be University of Miami, it could be the 78 Steelers. It doesn't matter to me. This team has to go play at a higher standard. You mentioned it earlier with the penalties. It's inexcusable to have 23 penalties in 2 games.
Yeah.
Sorry. It just is. That can't happen. That is a full-on coaches, team, players. It's just something that cannot happen. But that's everybody that's contributing to that right there. So you got to clean that up. And I'm not saying you could play penalty free. I mean, I think in some cases when you play penalty free, you kind of play soft because you're trying not to create penalties. But you've got to have much better play from the offensive line. Defensively, if you're put on a short field, you got to hold them to field goals. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's got to be the standard in some sense. And then offensively, we got to get it rolling again. The offensive line's got to get rolling so the run game can get going. If the run game gets going, then the play action becomes that much better. Play action gets that much better, then deep shots are available. That's what you got to have against Jacksonville. And if you get up early on them, you can't allow them back in the game. You get up, bang, bang, 10-0, 14-0. You got to hold them down like big brother on little brother.
Yeah.
You got to hold them down. How do you like this pillow, Bobby? You like the pillow, Bobby? Yeah, take that. I mean, like your little brother, Bobby. Goodness. You got to just, I didn't have a little brother, but that's imagine his name would have been Bobby. That's what I would have done to him. Okay. You can't let him up. And so it's got to be that. It's got to be that. You got to start playing to that standard because it gets awfully tough the very next week when you play the Buffalo Bills. And God help you if you walk out of there and the Jacksonville Jaguars have more points than you. Because now you're sitting 2-2 and you got to take on the hottest team in the NFL the week following.
All right. Let's welcome in Randy Savage, the Macho Man.
The cream of the crop.
Thank you. It's time for our cream of the crop winner, and that's who we think will be the winner if the Texans win. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go with cornerback Derek Stingley Jr.
Okay.
I think he gets one. I think he gets a pick in this game. He's done it before. He's done it before against Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
And I think it happens again this Sunday. I like what I've seen from him so far. We liked what he did during camp. And how much does he see of Brian Thomas? We'll see. How much is it Christian Kirk? Don't know. But I am going to go cream of the crop award winner, Derek Stingley Jr. John, who do you got?
Good one. Last week, I think my cream of the crop was Titus Howard, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I should make it him or I should make it the entire offensive line.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just move one person next to him. I'm going to go Shaq Mason.
All right.
Because the level of play from the three veterans up front has got to go up 3 notches at least. It's got to go up to where the expectation level is. And it wasn't there against Minnesota. And I think Shaq is that guy inside that's going to have to handle some of those longer, more athletic defensive tackles, defensive end, kind of 3-4 defensive end types, the 6'5", 6'6", 290 type guys. Shaq's got to get into those dudes and make them have a bad day. He's really got to play at a high level. So I'm going Shaq Mason, offensive line.
I like that. I like it. Let's get that. Let's get back on the winning track. Let's go to 3-1 through the first quarter-ish of the season. Can you believe that? It's already 4 games in.
Oof.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have much more of this next week on Texans in the Lab. And we thank you for checking us out. You, John Harris, me, Drew Dougherty, and you, gentle viewer, gentle listener. Let's do it again. Bye-bye.